Okay, Kevin. So there's one question I think a lot of people at some point will encounter in the career, especially if they work in a big organization in the office, not as a solo freelancer or essentially in team. Whenever we involve two people or more, there's the office politics. So how should a new hires or not just new hire, how should we as an employee at different level of the hierarchy handle and navigate office politics? So that is a relatively open question. So I'll leave it to you.
Sure. Yeah. Um, I think this question is very relevant for work people at any age, because, like you said, any environment more than two people, you're going to involve some degree of politics. So let me maybe explain in my own language what politics in this situation means, right? So everybody has a role. Every role has an objective. And in order to achieve my objective, there are a set of things I need to do. And sometimes when I pursue my objectives, the action that I've taken may not be consistent with the objective that you're trying to achieve and the ways you do them. And so these may result in certain degree of conflict, or at least some, inconveniences. So, and because we derive so much identity from work, we can't help but sometimes take work a little bit personally. And so those conflicts that emanates from work situation manifest in our mind into a personal situation. So instead of thinking this is a work issue, right? This problem is created because of that workflow versus this workflow. We start to think that guy is doing something to me. Okay, so to some degree, there is a mistreatment of this piece of action, and we regard that as people politics when actually it's not. But there's also, in real cases, that they actually are. Some people actually is using those things personally to try to gain an advantage, or to make someone look bad so that they can get ahead. That also exists. So it's a very broad phenomenon, across companies, across teams. And at the end, it's all about one thing, which is to how do I get things done my way, right? I'm trying to get things done my way. Anything that comes across that either stops me from doing that, or interfere me from doing that, I'm trying to somehow get rid of them, eliminate them, reduce the impact of them, so on and so forth. And in the process of doing those things, reduce, minimize, you have to impact other people's work, and you have to create or you have to perform certain actions, okay, so that the other people's progress do not come in to affect yours. Okay, so that's how politics generally manifest. And so the way that I would look at it is very simple. It's bound to happen. We can't avoid it. So if I can't avoid something, the next best thing is to understand it and to work with it. So it's kind of like, I give you an example, there's always going to be a wave from the ocean. I can't avoid it. Okay. Now, but I can learn how to surf. If I learn how to surf, the wave comes, I'm happy, I pick up my surfboard, I'm going to have some fun surfing it. But if I don't know, and I'm being sent out there with nothing, and I don't know how to surf, I'm going to be terrified. I'm going to be captured under a wave and cut the rocks, and many things that happen to me. So what you've just said is a good word, which is to how do we navigate this, so that, as a matter of course, we're able to surf and navigate these so-called political situations. Okay. So first of all is to understand. What are we trying to understand? What are people's roles and responsibility, and what are their objectives? What are their responsibilities? Okay. Now, it doesn't change the political situation, but you are at least able to make sense of why it is important that they want something done in a certain way. Now, if you don't understand the reason why they do that in a certain way, you're missing a perspective, because you can't solve any problems unless you understand where the problem is originating from. Okay. At least you don't know how to position yourself when the problem occurs. Where is the safest place to position yourself? Okay. So I would say, in order to understand them, you obviously need to access these people. In order to access them, you got to have a relationship. If they don't talk to you, how are you going to understand these people? So you see, let's go back to the very first thing about relationship, right? It allows you to be in a better place to understand people's objectives, responsibilities, and therefore lay the ground. At least you understand what the terrain is like, okay? There's got to be a hill here, it's got to be a river there, because these two guys are doing different things, and where you are is somewhere in the middle. So when it floods, okay, you're going to be impacted. When there's a landslide, you're going to be impacted. So what do? Where do you run to, right? Figure of speech talking about. And so understand these people. And so the most successful people about able to navigate politics are those people with no enemies. They're only here to build friends. So you think, well, I'm a nice guy. I don't think I have any enemies. Maybe you think so, okay? But don't forget, you have a job to do too. And in order to do your job, sometimes just being yourself, doing your job, creates an obstacle for someone else doing theirs. And to them, you're a nice guy, but you're also an enemy because you're stopping them, okay? So let's say you're a compliance officer and I'm someone in the business and I'm trying to make new business with a new client. There's some risk to it. And you got hold of this piece of news, and then you did evaluation and assessment, and you think that this is a bad idea. So you come and talk to me about the 5 reasons why I shouldn't do this. Immediately, you're my enemy because you're trying to stop me from making money, which is how I derive my livelihood. How am I going to make budget without doing this? So you're not helping me, Francis. And by the way, let me remind you, you get paid because of me. Unless I do this, you don't even exist, right? So you see how this conversation is going to develop, right? If you don't do anything else. So, but then if you demonstrate your understanding, the way you talk to this person will be different. You say, Kevin, say, hey, I know that you're trying to do this something new. I fully understand where you're coming from. You need to do this because you need to make budget, and it's difficult out there. So I totally, resonate with your situation. However, there are some things that I need to talk to you about, and that is the way you design this process. Let me explain to you the current situation with the regulations and the influence this has on your thing. So rather than coming to me and tell me and give me an order not to do, you are consulting me, okay? Now, I'm a smart guy. I know you're from compliance. I know ultimately if you don't sign off, I don't have a chance. So this attitude that makes a difference, doesn't it? So I'm a business head. I think, I feed you. If you come and show me that, hey, I'm the boss here, then I'm going to say, who are you, Francis? Have you forgotten something? Where did your paycheck come from? And so the minute that attitude enters into each other's mindset, it's very hard to change. It's extremely difficult to change because that means one person has to retreat from the position, is losing pride. And it's possibly somebody would perceive it as a weakness. So nobody actually want to be perceived that way because you're going to lose credibility and therefore trust from the powers that be. So therefore, a much better situation is don't get yourself in that position to begin with. So imagine all these people you're not trying to make an enemy of. In order to understand them, why they need to do certain things, you would change your words, your attitude, your approach to make them feel that you're not trying to stop them. You're trying to ask them to work with you to solve a problem that we're facing together. And we need to solve this problem so that you can actually start doing what you want to do. I'm here to help you to get this stuff done, but you need to help us also solve this problem. That's a very different proposition. So we call it politics because it sounded like a politician, the way I just talked about this. Okay. So it is about, trying to find the best way without using outright power, fear, authority to solve a problem rather than dictating an outcome. And that's what I mean by navigating politics. There is no one right answer for this, Francis. The only right answer is, how do I do it without hurting other people? How do I minimize the damage, right? And still trying to demonstrate that I'm really here to try to solve a problem, not personal issue, right? I don't hate you or anything, but please work with me. Okay, so how do I demonstrate that to you? How do I make you feel that for me? That is the skill that I'm talking about.
So it's like, from what you talked about, the example of compliance and business, it sounds like one of the ways to navigate office politics is to make it into one team. So we are in it together. Instead of me versus you, it is us together to do something. Instead of I'm trying to advance my agenda and you are there to stop me, let's advance our agenda, the company's agenda together. And we can do it by simply changing the wordings or changing the mindset and perception of it. So maybe you say, it's subtle, right? Or it's just wording. Is it really that useful? Maybe you have to try it, maybe not, because at least you do your part to not make enemy. Then how the other party respond is up to them, right? You can't obviously say, okay, let's not be an enemy, right? Because nobody's going to upfront and say that. But at least you are indicating or showing signal that you are not trying to advance your own issue or own agenda, but instead is stay professional. That is the work, and let's do it together. Do I get it correct?
Yes, but more importantly, you're emphasizing that you're trying to help him to get what he wants. So not only you're not the enemy, you're actually a friend. You are an alliance, right? Sure, my title is compliance. However, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to find the best way for you to try to get your stuff done. And I think in the design, I can help you with certain modifications that would be in both of our interests to do, so that you can get your stuff done as well as being compliant with the actual relevant regulations. So let's talk about it. Let's get this done. So at all times, you're putting his objectives as the most important thing they're trying to achieve. And the reason why you're here is because there are something that necessitate his attention and maybe modification in order to achieve that. And you are the subject matter expert who is assisting him to do that. So you're a helper.
Yeah. So it sounds like you are trying to do the work without threatening his own work or the other person's own work, without threatening his power, his credibility, and more importantly, his pride and ego.
Right.
So that got me asking, so how do we perform without threatening other people or without sacrificing other people if we want to do something well? Or let's be a little bit realistic, right? So people in the workplace, at some point, they want to advance, they want to go to a higher level, maybe get a better pay, and maybe both, maybe either one. So, but sometimes at the higher up, the position is limited, right? You can't have everyone in the team member become the team leader. So essentially, managers, or the higher the level you go in the organization, usually the number of people occupying those positions will be the minority or will be fewer. So essentially, there's a competition in that. So in this case, in the context of office politics, how do we advance, but not trying to threaten other people or not trying to put other people down to advance? Is it possible, or is there any ways to do that if possible?
I think there are two aspects to this. One that is within your own team, and one that is outside of your team. Okay. So within your own team, I think the most sensitive relationship of what you just talked about is the relationship between you and your boss. Okay. Example. So your boss gave you something to do. And as you go into it, it gives you more to do because he thinks you're capable. Okay. So he's doing less and less, you're doing more and more, and you're able to handle the workload, so he's very happy. Now, when you complete the work, how are you going to present the work? Are you going to tell everybody that, hey, you've done the work? Or are you going to give your work to the boss, not publicize how much you've done, and let the boss take credit? And if he chooses to give you credit, you get some credit. And if he doesn't, then let it be. Okay, so why is this important? Just think about it. I'm the boss. I've got a team of maybe 4 or 5 people. And your job, really, unwritten, is to make me look good. And my job is to make my boss look good. That's why they hire me. Okay. If you are doing something that doesn't make me look good, but make you look good, you are just messing with the law of nature, or the what we call the protocol, or the chain of command, whatever you want to call it. Okay. My suggestion is be aware, especially when, actually it doesn't matter what age group you are, young people, experienced people. I think it's natural for you, if you've done a lot of work, that you want to show the work to people and say that, hey, I've done it, because you think that this is a fair recognition for your talents and your work to get through to be recognized. Okay. I understand that. It's very reasonable. However, think about the dynamics in the relationship between you and your boss. Okay. To a lesser extent, between you and your colleagues. Okay. And consider who you are, the relative positioning you are at the team, and the relationship with those people. My suggestion is to be very clear about how people perceive your actions. Because when they don't know you, then the perception is reality. And perceptions, if they didn't come from you, are coming from how other people talk about you behind your back. For example, your boss or your colleagues. Unfortunately, this happens without your knowledge. And you don't know who they're talking to. And some people would already have a bad impression of you, even if you never met them, and you don't even know why, because in the background, some people talk about you in a certain way. So I would think that, although on the surface it doesn't look very fair that you've done a lot of work that you didn't get all of the credit for, my suggestion is this: don't think about how work and result need to correlate with instant recognition. Okay. Be very aware that you're in a team environment with many relationship, sort of a network structure in between those. Be very aware of your position in that relationship and what is the expected behavior of that particular position. Okay. Just like playing chess, every chessboard, every single piece has a rule. Okay, certain chess piece cannot move in a certain way. It can only be moved in a certain way. There's a rule. Respect that. Okay, the whole chess game is not being won by one move or one chess piece. It's a collective. Sometimes there's a sacrifice in order for the whole chess piece to get won, right? So these I would call, maybe you would consider sacrifice, because hey, not everybody understand how hard I work on this. I get it. Your boss knows. And how would he pay you back? Well, if you don't threaten him or her, meaning that you don't announce without his permission to the world that you've done it, right? He or she might, I'm not saying that they would guarantee, some people don't, might just recognize you at the right time, in the right way. For example, during the year-end appraisal, privately in your own appraisal, he or she will write you a very glowing review, but the whole world is not going to see it. It's just between two of you. And he gives you a pay rise, gives you a bonus. The whole world doesn't know about it, just you and him. Okay. Now, is that fair? I think it's quite fair. Because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have this job. So, and as a boss, if I constantly find an employee who's trying to show off above me, how can I trust this person? He's always going to feel insecure. What is he going to do? What is he going to do next? Right? Would you keep someone like that in your team if you can't predict what he's going to do next? Right? So for some people, this is very rare, but sometimes they will copy the boss's boss in a DL list, distribution list, right? Some people do it in a very, kind of like a subtle way, thinking that people don't know about it, but everybody knows, right? A global DL list with everybody. Of course, the boss is going to be on it, and you announce that, oh, this is now gone live. We have done a lot of good work, and you sound like you're the one who make it happen. Hey, what is the boss's boss going to think about it? They think that you're the hero. And the boss, that email should have come from your boss, not from you. It's up to your boss to say, hey, Francis did a fantastic job as a project manager. Had it not been for him, blah, blah, blah. But I'm the one who overall covered the same things, so I still take the credit for it. There's a big difference. So not threatening your boss is a very important thing to remember, because you would want the work that you do to be recognized by your boss, not by anybody else. You want to build trust with your boss. Okay. So over time, if he needs a successor, you become the most likely, the most capable, the most trustworthy of the team. That's how you would want to position yourself. So play the longer game. Don't play the short game by overstepping the boundary to somewhere you don't belong. Secondly, about your colleagues within the team. If you show off like that, you're going to just make you shine and everybody else looks dim. Okay. Again, not the same profound impact as you do to the boss, but similar effect that people think that you're just a show off. Hey, they think that I've done a lot of things that you've done, but I don't tell the whole world about it. So why are you just, blowing the trumpet for your own trumpet? Who are you trying to show off, right? And people, again, they don't like you behind your back. They may say still, give you the normal courteous looking face when they're with you, but the minute the back is turned, it's a completely different person. And also that does not do your political position any good, in the environment. And then as to the part that I talk about, which is outside of your team, okay, that talk about, okay, going back to the scenario between compliance and the business head, right? Don't threaten me from you being a compliance officer that you can stop me from doing the business. Don't talk to me like that. Don't take that position, okay? Even though I know very well that you could. But if you don't talk about it and you focus on what you can do to help me, I still feel a little bit sweet, right? So there are certain things that you don't have to say because you know that it is understood. But if you use that knowing that the other person already knows, the other person is going to say, yeah, I know. Okay. So you have the power. You're telling me that, I work for you now. So don't forget that people like to be respected, generally speaking. Nobody likes to be disrespected and feel inferior to another person. So regardless of your grade, rank, nature of your position, and the working relationship, at all times, keep the respect. Say and do the most respectful things that you would like other people to do to you, and you can't go far wrong. Most of the time, political sort of disconnects or enemies are built because there's a lack of respect in some way, shape, or form. And they remember you for a long time because they lose face in front of other people, right? And you can probably understand, right? Especially some senior people. And those, in my view, can be avoided. And so this is how threats kind of intertwine into the whole political, situation we talk about at work.
Yeah, there's the saying, right? People will forget what you do to them, but they will never forget what you make them feel. So I think the respect part is the big part of this whole office politics things. And if you show people with respect, at least people should give you certain level of respect because, well, you are not offending them. Then why should they go all out of their way all of a sudden to offend you out of nothing? So I think that's a good summary.
Yeah, I think you may not have everybody as your friend, but at least you don't have enemies. And that is a very true kind of message that I want to get across in terms of how to manage this so-called office politics. But, think about your life in any other relationship. It's still the same. Parental relationship, romantic relationships, friendship. When does it not apply?
And on that, do you have other thoughts you want to add for this question?
No, thank you, Francis.
Thanks, Kevin.